So, ich glaube, alle haben sich langsam eingefunden. Die restlichen noch rein. Ich hoffe mal, ihr habt alle eine angenehme Pause gehabt und seid völlig entspannt und bereit, noch mehr Informationen aufzunehmen. Es geht spannend weiter. Wir werden jetzt international, und zwar einen Vortrag von Eelco Eerenberg zum Thema von autodominanten Stadtzentrum zu einer menschenorientierten Umgebung. Das wird so laufen, dass jetzt als erstes ein Einspieler kommt, ein kleiner Film über Utrecht. Danach gibt es den Vortrag. Eelco Eerenberg wird uns nicht hören, wenn er den Vortrag hat. Und am Schluss gibt es aber nochmal die Chance, dass man Fragen stellt. An der Technik ist Jochen Stein, der wird dann noch das übersetzen, wenn es sein muss, von Deutsch ins Englische und umgekehrt. Da wird es passen. Nochmal schnell zum Stadtrat Eelco Eerenberg. Er ist seit 2019 Stadtrat in Utrecht. Er ist verantwortlich für die Ressorts Raumentwicklung, Bildung und öffentliche Gesundheit. Sein Vortrag beleuchtet den Rückbau der innerstädtischen Ringautobahn in einem dort früher verlaufenden Stadtkanal, den Singel. Und mit diesem Projekt ist die Stadt Utrecht natürlich ein großes Vorbild für uns hier in Nürnberg und in Fürth, was den Stadtkanal angeht. Und ja, gute Unterhaltung für den nächsten spannenden Vortrag.
In de jaren 70 kwam in Utrecht het modernste winkelcentrum van Europa. En om dat bereikbaar te maken kwam er een snelweg op de plek waar eerst water was. Maar veel bewoners wilden hun singel terug.
Het is duidelijk dat het herstel van de singels kan rekenen op brede steun uit de bevolking.
In 2002 vroeg de gemeente Utrecht aan de bewoners of de singel weer terug moest komen.
En wij zeiden
ja! Vanaf 2015 werd gewerkt aan het laatste deel van het herstel van de Singel.
Met een focus op inwoners, op ons.
Om het water terug te brengen kwam een mega ingewikkelde bouwput in het hart van de stad. Vlakbij het drukste treinstation van Nederland.
Het betekent een omslag in stedelijke ontwikkeling. Meer groen en ontmoeting in plaats van wegen en auto's.
Na jaren van slopen, breken, bouwen en graven is sinds 2020 onze Singel weer rond.
Er is een impuls gegeven aan biodiversiteit voor bijen en vlinders en bewoners onderhouden het park zelf. Het herstel van het ecosysteem verzacht vervelende effecten van de klimaatverandering door verkoeling van bomen in zomers. En ons nieuwe halfverhardingspad heeft een buffer van lavagesteente met ruimte voor water na regen.
De Singel is niet alleen een kanaal, het is een ontmoetingsplek. Langs het water
en erop.
Voor jong
en voor oud.
Een gezond stedelijk leven met verbinding door groen en innovatie.
En daar zijn we in Utrecht enorm trots op.
Okay, we can start.
Okay. Innovatieve Stadtbau. Ich gehe weiterreden auf English. I hope it's not a problem for you. Can you hear me all right? Yes? Okay, so 2 thumbs up. So thank you, and thank you for having me in your beautiful city. I honestly, this is my holiday, so I'm with the kids in a nice little town in the Netherlands. So otherwise I would have made the trip and visit you in person. But I'm really happy to tell the story about Utrecht and how we changed our city, especially with regards to one of the ugliest things we've ever did in our city. That was a 12-lane highway right across the city, and that's very comparable to your story. So next slide, please. So just a quick overview. We are really close by when we look at a world scale. So Utrecht is really in the middle of the Netherlands. We are the 4th largest city in the Netherlands, but we are also the fastest growing city in the Netherlands. So right now we have 350,000 inhabitants, but we will grow to almost 500,000 in, let's say, 1-2 decades. So it's going really fast. And this poses us for a lot of questions, and especially how to be a nice, climate-friendly, healthy city for all those new inhabitants. Next slide, please. So this is a picture we took in the summer of 2011, and this is right at the heart of our city. So in the middle, you will see our railway station, our Hauptbahnhof. This is Utrecht Hauptbahnhof. So this is right in the middle of our city. And when you take a look, you see all these train tracks which divides the city. But when you go to the left, you will see that there is the construction is going on. That was a highway, a 12-lane highway, and we are working on it, as you can see in the picture. And all the way to the left is our historic city center. So you could not reach the historic city center from our railway station because of this crazy highway that was there. Next slide, please. So another picture from the same viewpoint, 10 years later, and now you see we have a canal. So we have the water back in the city, and this is actually the way it should be, because this is the way Utrecht was designed. We are 900 years city this year, so we celebrate, and this was the way it was always intended. And now you can cross the water by bridge, but we also built a nice little shopping mall all across the water. I have some pictures later on. So now it's an accessible area, an area where people can walk, where people can obviously go by boat. They can hike, they can run, they can relax. It improved everything. Next slide, please. So the big question is, why did we even start this? Because the highway was in perfect condition. Lots of people said it's quite easy because we can reach this beautiful historic city center by car. It's really expensive to get rid of a highway and turn it into water. So why? Next slide. There are 3 main reasons why we started this huge project. The first one is to connect, literally to connect the new city, which is on the right side of this picture, with the old city, the historic city center on the left side of this picture, but also to give more meaning in terms of the structures that our city has for more than 900 years, because we started as a Roman settlement. And the third reason is to actually reconstruct the city as the way it's meant to be. Next slide, please. I'll elaborate on these 3 things a little bit more. So first on the connection. I already mentioned this, so it's now it's another viewpoint, so it's the other way around. But the historic city center is on the right side of this illustration, and you see the red line. This is the historic canal. It's actually a defense. So there was also a city wall. There were towers, there were gates, and water to make sure Utrecht stayed safe. Then you have this station area, and left to the station area is a completely new city center. It's where our messe is, so our halls for all kinds of events. But we're building lots of houses there. It was a really bad area because there were lots of parking places. It was not used. So we want to connect the historic city center and the neighboring new city center and make it into one complete area. Next slide, please. So another reason is the central station, as I already mentioned, because it's the busiest railway station in our country. And as you can see, it's quite complicated. There are lots of people, there are lots of trains, there are a lot of tracks. And everybody who visited Utrecht Central Station, basically the people get lost. And we took this big project as an opportunity to do everything at once. So it's not only restoring a canal, but it's also rearranging the central station. We got rid of lots of train tracks. We got rid of lots of intersections between train tracks. And as you will see later on, it's way more organized and way more smooth. And actually now it's a place you want to be instead of a place you want to skip or walk away from. Next slide, please. So this is, I think, a familiar picture for you guys there, because this is actually how it was. So this is the 12-lane highway, as I mentioned, with all sorts of car infrastructure to cross them. And this is right next to our city center, and it's not a friendly way to use the city, because it was a huge barrier. It was okay to cross it by bus or by car, but people hated it crossing it by bike or by foot. It was noisy, it was dirty, and well, you could take a car, and it was just a highway, and it ended right in the city center, as you can see at the, well, it's hard to point, but you see the bridges across the highway, and then the highway goes a little bit up. That's where it ended. And we even made another historic mistake, because there was another piece of the canal that was removed there, and they turned it into a parking place. So you can literally just drive through the city center by this highway, go up a little, as you can see, and then you can park your car over there in what used to be a middle-aged canal. Next slide, please. So, as I already mentioned, we are a fast-growing city. We are also a very busy city, and we as Dutch people like to bike, but in Utrecht we want to be a healthy city. So we do it a little bit more than other cities in the country. And one of the key messages that I have when I have these kind of talks is that people use the city the way you design the city. So we invested lots of money in excellent bike infrastructure, but this has a downside too, because then people actually start to use them. And now we have more than, or we have 120,000 cyclists that pass by one lane actually right underneath the central station. So the area is swarmed by bikes, and we have to facilitate them in a way that it's quite easy and enjoyable to bike, because otherwise they will start using the car again. And that's something that we don't want. Next slide again. So one of the things that we did in this project, and I can highly encourage you to do the same, is we built this huge parking space for bikes. So it's one of the largest in the world, actually. So it's a parking garage for 12,500 bikes. And again, if you build a facility like that, it will be used, because it's really hard to find a free spot now. So it is an alternative for the car. And if you have excellent facilities, people will leave the car behind and use these kind of facilities. And you can just take the stairs and you will be right in the middle of the central station. Next slide, please. So another thing that we did along with restoring the canal was restoring the area, because everything was so car oriented and shop oriented that lots of places were not safe. It was dark, it was dirty, it was not invitable. People really, they didn't want to go there. And one of the things that really helped us with that was that all the businesses that are in the area, they said, well, city and city board, this is not good, because people literally just run across our businesses because they want to get out of here. Next slide, please. So, and this is the new look and feel of the shopping center. So it changed radically. And this picture is actually taken above the canal, and you can see the glass windows. So you can walk over these glass windows and you can look down at the canal. Will see the boats going beneath you. And now this shopping area is a open area. It's a nice area. People want to visit them. Of course, all the businesses are really happy. And we consider it part of the city. So we don't consider it a private environment, but a public environment, because it's the way that the people walk from the historic city center to the new city center or to the central train station. So it's open for public. It is green. It will become even more green because the trees are a little bit young, and it's really integrated in the environment. Next slide, please. So this is what you've been waiting for. This is how it looks nowadays. So this was the highway, and now it's the water again. And you will see, well, again, if you design a city, people will use it in the way that you design it. So these stairs are used for people just hanging around, but there are also concerts there. You'll see the building that you see here with all the circles there is one of our cultural facilities. And you will see people using the boat. The left side of the canal is green, and it's actually a part of a green route along the canal. So that's a place that people use to walk or hike or jog. So yeah, if you design it like this, people will use it like this. And it's a friendly, green environment. It helps drop the temperature. It helps drop the noise. It helps improve the air quality. And above all, it's just really nice because this is the picture you want to take when you visit our city instead of the picture of the highway. Next slide, please. So just a quick picture of how these spaces are used now. So you'll see it's not a good picture, I'm sorry for that, but there's a really famous Dutch band playing there on the rooftop of one of our cultural facilities. And now people can stand here and listen to the band, and they're standing on one of the places that was the highway again. So it opens up the city for all sorts of new meanings. Next slide, please. So this is the other side of the central station, and again, it's a one project. So we took care of everything in one project because it's all connected. So this is the new side of the city center. And here we have new white spaces. This is a space or a square that people use for demonstrations, but also for sporting events. And you will see the wide, large building. It's actually on top of the central station, and that's one of the buildings that we have as a city. So that's where I work actually. And you can go here by foot and just walk straight ahead, and you'll end up at the famous Dome Square, where our beautiful Dome Tower is situated. So it's a 50-minute walk from one side of the new city center to the heart of our historic center, and it's green, it's lush, and it's a connected environment. Next slide, please. So this is an overview again, what we should reconstruct, because the water was there way before we as public servants were there. So you'll see the left side. This was the water, and then there's a piece missing. That was the highway, and on the right hand side you see two blue arrows. So the north-south arrow is completed now. So that water has been restored, and you can go around the city by boat again. And we are still working on restoring the east-west arrow, which was also an historic waterway, and we'll be bringing that back as well. And all the same arguments and reasons to do so are valid for that project as well. It's also part of the project. Next slide, please. So, quick overview. As you see on the bottom side of this slide, in the I think it says 1800 something. You see there was water there. There were trees. There were activities, and then in the 1970s it was turned in this beautiful, not terrible highway that, without any trees. It was completely gray area. Then we started working again, and in just 2 years ago it opened up, and it's actually the same viewpoint. So that's the way it looks right now on the right hand side on the bottom of this slide. Next slide, please. I'll speed up a little bit. So just a few pictures to give you an overview. So obviously a before picture. Next slide, please. A quick story about how we did it together with the people in our city, because a funny story is that it was the people of Utrecht always said it was a mistake to build this highway. They hated it because we destroyed the historic way that the city was built. So there is a group of citizens who came along and said, you need to restore this, you need to restore this. They said it for decades. And then one of my predecessors said, okay, let's do so, but let's do it together. So we had a project and a process where we designed together with not only the people that live near the Singel, the canal, but also the people that love the canal. And they decided on how the park should look, what kinds of materials, what kinds of events, if we should have those stairs there or not, and all sorts of questions. So we really did it together with our people. Next slide, please. So again, another picture, but this is a drawing, but it's because in the green area, this is a little bit more to the south. And I think we removed the highway, and half of the space is a canal, and the other half of the space is a new park. It's already there, but the trees are quite young. But it will look like this in the next spring. And as you can see, it's beautiful, and it's what you want in this century. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, because you've seen it already. Funny story about the trees, because new trees have grown along the highway. So it's really sad, but we needed to destroy or replace some of the trees in order to make the canal and in order to make the new park. But most of them got replaced. I have a picture on that on the next slide. But those who had to be demolished are used as either as art or as or we sold them to the city. So on the left hand side, you'll see, I'm not sure how to call it in English or in German, but you can put all sorts of cheese and a platter. I guess it's called a platter. I don't know. I think you know what I mean. Next slide, please. So we had to relocate lots of trees. This is what I already mentioned. So because this project goes, it's a story about making the city green again and making the city lush again. We thought it would be really strange to get rid of all the trees and just buy new ones. So every tree that could be relocated is relocated. So this, of course, it's more expensive and it takes more time, but it fits the story. And not only the story, I think it's the right way to do so, because the trees are really important as well. Next slide, please. So then we had, of course, to do some construction to get the water flowing again. Next slide, please. Just some pictures to show you what needs to be done. Really, really, really tough machinery, because these highways are really constructed in such a way that it's hard to get rid of them. They're really, really solid. So lots of demolition going on. Next slide, please. And of course, right at the city center, so we took all sorts of measures to keep the noise levels down. I think it's a little bit too much detail for this presentation, but we thought about it really well. And of course, it's more expensive, and of course, it takes more time, but you need to do it in such a way that the people can live next to it. Next slide, please. So this is just some pictures of the progress. So in the left picture, you see the new shopping mall. It was already constructed, and you see all the groundwork being done. And lots of people think that we don't need to pour the water in, but it's just, the water is just there. It's in the ground. So when you start digging, the water will come up automatically. Next slide, please. So here you see it almost being finished. Next slide, please. Again, really complicated project, because the city center has so much functions and everything needed to be accessible during the project. So the logistics were a nightmare, but we managed. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We just love these pictures in Utrecht because we're really proud of this project. So sorry about all all the pictures, but it's beautiful. And you see on the left-hand side, this is I think taken 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and you see the new bridges and the new walls, well, it's sort of a promenade. Next slide, please. And this is actually a picture of the north side of the reconstructed canal. So here the park has been completed, and you see everything, flowers, it's green, there's a nice fountain, and this place actually where the fountain was the parking space that I mentioned before. Next slide, please. You've seen this already. Next slide, please. Again, another viewpoint, but some historic pictures. So in the 1986, it was 68. Sorry about that. 1968, it was water. Then in the 80s, it was the highway, and now you can go there by boat again. Next slide, please. So this was the grand opening, because it's sort of a joke, because so many people ask me, hey, how are you going to fill the new canal? So, and as I already explained, it's just the water is in the ground and it will start to rise once you start digging. But we thought, well, if lots of people think that we should fill the canal, maybe we should pretend like that's the way we should have done it. So the grand opening, we constructed this really large bucket in the colors of our city. So that's me on the boat. I'm not sure if you recognize me. And on the other boat, that's a replica of a Roman boat, because we originated as a Roman settlement. We have all the inhabitants, the people that live next to the Singel, and the people that love the Singel. So actually the people that said, hey, you should restore this. And they pull the rope, and then this bucket got emptied with all the water. And we said, hey, now we have restored the canal. Next slide, please. So this is just to wrap up. This is our beautiful new canal at night with a beautiful new shopping mall. But these are just symbols of a larger story of restoring the Hauptbahnhof area, connecting the old city and the new city, and making our city climate friendly, green, enjoyable, and basically more human after all. And on the left-hand side, you see our beautiful Dome Tower, which is really famous. And of course, the ears of Nijntje or Miffy, which is the symbol of our city and was invented in our city. So thank you for having me. Thank you for telling this story. And I'm happy to answer any or some of your questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, also wir bedanken uns recht herzlich für den Vortrag, und ich würde jetzt einfach nochmal die Fragen aufnehmen, die dann Jochen quasi an Eelco Eerenberg weitergibt.
War Utrecht schon vorher die am schnellsten wachsende Stadt, oder hat der Kanal das nochmal beeinflusst?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. So I think it's related in two ways. Obviously, it helps being a nicer city. So I don't think there's a mathematical correlation, but when we ask our people, they say, well, this looks like a nice area. It's a nice city. It's a city I want to live in, especially because of all these bike facilities. I've only shown you two, but there are way more bike facilities in the area, and people like our city because you can get to the central station by bike from, I would say, most of the neighborhoods in the city in 15 minutes, and then you can park your bike right underneath the central train station, and you can work in, for example, Amsterdam or The Hague because it's all nearby. So this project really helps because otherwise it was really hard to get by the central station by bike. But it also helps in another way because this is not this canal, but the other canal that I mentioned, the East-West Canal. When we restore that canal, we get rid of lots of car infrastructure, and that actually makes place. So we can build houses over there. So we'll be building houses at a place that was car infrastructure before. So that will also makes room for new houses, because our philosophy is that we will build 60,000 houses before 2040, and all of these houses will fit in the existing city because there are so many places that we can transform. And that's a concrete example that we can combine those things.
Ja, danke schön. Ein paar Fragen zu den Kosten und insbesondere auch, wie finanziert worden ist, also was die Stadt Utrecht tragen musste, vielleicht der niederländische Staat oder die EU. Ein bisschen so erklären, was zu den Kosten, wie die Kosten liefen. Okay.
So it's mainly a city project, so it's mainly city budget. But the shopping mall that you see there, it's Hoog Katerijnen. We made a deal with the owner of the shopping mall. So they invested in that part of the area. And part of the deal was that it's considered public space. And obviously for the shopping mall, it's better because it's a nice area, people go there and more people want to stay there, so that's good for their businesses. But they really added to the project. And then we've had some subsidies for parts of the project. And those subsidies came from all sorts of governments, the national government, the regional government, the EU government, but it's mainly a city project. And the way that it works in the Netherlands and also in our city is that all the costs are put in a project sheet. A exploitation is the term we use for it, and then we have to earn the money by, for example, building new offices around this area. It didn't balance out completely, so we had to allocate some city budget to it, but most of it is earned by adding new buildings to the area and selling them off.
Okay, thank you.
Wir haben hier in Deutschland bei allen Projekten, die gegen Autos unternommen werden sollen, immer eine sehr aggressive Meute von Autofahrern, die ihre große Lobby aktiviert und starken Widerstand leistet. Warum gibt es das in Utrecht nicht? Oder wenn doch, was haben Sie gegen diese Leute gemacht?
So great question again. I think there's not one answer to it. It's a combination of factors. So we are a really progressive city, also in terms of politics. So our city is governed by progressive parties and left parties, one might say, for decades. So that obviously helps. But also different private partners in the area said that the previous highway that was there actually didn't help them make any business because, and of course they didn't say so 30 years ago, but they started saying this 15 years ago and said, well, maybe we should rethink the strategy of getting everybody here by car. Then we had some nice research done in our city that could actually show that when people take the bike, they actually spend more in the city because of different reasons. So we started to have some evidence that it's also a smart thing to do from a commercial perspective. And obviously, there still are some petrol heads. There are still people who think it's better to have everything accessible by car. But in my experience, those people will be there at the start of the project. But when you finish the project, the same people will say, okay, actually, it looks way better. It's way nicer. It's also a matter of courage. You should just do it because the people who are against it will love it in the end.
Ja, wenn wir schon beim Verkehr sind, würde mich natürlich auch interessieren, wie viele Fahrzeuge sind denn über diese Straße davor gefahren oder kann man irgendwo einen Zugang finden zu diesen Zahlen zum Verkehr in Utrecht?
Maybe we can look that up and give you the actual numbers, but it was a 12-lane highway, so that was because it was really busy. And it was also busy because of two reasons. It was like the way that visitors came, or people that work at Utrecht came to our city from the national highways around us. But it was also a connection. You can go north-south within our city. So people that live in Utrecht South can go to their family in Utrecht North by car, just racing through the city. And with all the bridges that were on top of it, there were also east-west corridors. So it was busy because of two reasons. It really attracted traffic in the city and it invited people from outside the city to use it. So I'm not sure the numbers right now, but I'll look it up and have it sent to you. But it was busy. And there's also a strategy behind this because we are a really fast-growing city. As I said, we are building 60,000 houses in the next 17 years. And all these houses will have people that will need to transport themselves. And the national government tells us, actually, Utrecht, you cannot build these houses if everybody is using the car, because then they will use the highways around our city and they will get clogged up. So we have a really, really aggressive strategy to have people out, to take people out of the car. The new neighborhoods that we build don't have any car parking for people in the new neighborhoods that we built anymore. This will help us facilitate the growth, because otherwise we cannot grow. So this is also part of a bigger movement to facilitate the bike, facilitate the public transport, facilitate people using their feet, their body, basically, because otherwise we're not able to grow. So there's